Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thanks for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Well, I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. And today on the Voice of Yoga, we will be discussing the aspects of a new beginning and suggest importance of a primary relationship with your divinity. We'll be talking about the chart of the new moon, which is 3 degrees Leo in the 7th house. And there's a question I want to pose to you, Swami. It's in our description. I think it's a good place to start. Is it possible to find a simple one-size-fits-all solution to all of life's challenges?
Well, to answer your question, yes. You know, it comes back to what we have been saying in these shows, that the secret to life is to put God first, or maybe more politically correct to say use what you need, or your number one need, as a symbol to produce the feeling in your body that you're happy. And so this new moon in Leo creates, I think, a really good opportunity for us to, if not do it, but at least be receptive to these concepts. You know, the concept of using what you need as a symbol to produce the feeling that you're happy seems to be somewhat foreign. And in order to really kind of understand the human experience and probably the human dilemma, the fixed signs, the fixed quadruplicity, what they call in astrology, that's the sustaining force of the universe. And so when we're structuring our reality system, the fixed signs, that's going to be the infrastructure of your reality system. And the whole thing about Leo, the key phrase for Leo is I will. And it rules your cardiovascular system, and it is also associated with the attribute of loyalty. And that's why, you know, we talked about this show, the whole concept of heartfelt loyalty. But in order to really understand where our loyalty lies, you have to go back to Taurus. Because Taurus is, the key phrase of Taurus is I have. Taurus is our values. If we don't understand the importance of essential needs, and if we do not internalize our essential needs, then we've kind of missed our first exit. You know, we missed our turn, and so a big part of the spiritual advance that we're doing, especially this week, is we're focusing on values. You know, because if you are still looking for something tangible to validate yourself, then, of course, the progressive cycle is completely thwarted. You've missed it. So in order to fix it, we really have to go back to our values. What is important to me? And again, as we've been saying, it must be heartfelt, which means that you have to get it in your body. See, the heart center, or the concept of the heart, is your body's feeling state. And as you look at the quadruplicity of the fixed signs, you start with Taurus, which is I have. You go to Leo, which is I will. Then the next one is Scorpio, and the key phrase for that is I desire. And then the last one is Aquarius, and it's I know. So a big part of, this solution to life is internalizing the right symbol to produce the right feeling. It's like we have been saying that we all have desire, but it is what we desire that is going to determine our fate. Again, if we desire particles, we will be fated to being of an animal nature. If we desire waves, we will be fated to being of a human nature. But if we desire the void or the nothing, we will be of a divine nature. And so going to your fixed signs, and especially like a new moon, which is a new beginning, and this particular new moon, there's a really interesting configuration here. Because in the chart that we're using, which is where this new moon is happening in Hampton, the new moon falls in the 7th house, which is our house of relationship. And one of the things that we always say that it is of the utmost importance to have a primary relationship with your divinity. It's the whole concept of coming back to marriage, the union of the individual with the divine, because that's what gives everything power. And what I've noticed is most of us are trying to do things, especially intimate, interpersonal relationships, without this primary relationship. And one of the reasons why they fail so badly is because they are powerless. They deteriorate into control dramas where we're basically competing for energy on a limited level. So again, coming back to this one-size-fits-all solution to life's challenges, it comes back to this primary relationship with your divinity. And again, it's not hocus pocus. It's not some abstract, otherworldly concept. It translates into a practical guide for highly effective living. Use what you need, what you really do need, as a symbol to produce the feeling in your body that you're okay. Because remember, we do not come in with that programming. Our bodies look for food, we look for mother, we look for approval, for validation. So a big part of understanding how it's going to work is you've got to have all your ducks in order. Because again, if you do not desire nothing, you're going to be drawing from something. And if you're drawing from something, then you've missed your turn. So this new beginning, and also the other things that are really, I want to say, supporting this concept of heartfelt loyalty and this relationship with your divinity, is that Venus is very close to conjuncting the cusp of the 7th house, and it's in Cancer, and it's opposing Pluto, which is in the 1st house. So when you look at it, it is also an aspect with it. There is a square to Uranus, there is a trine to Neptune, and there is a trine to Saturn. Now, Venus is our heart center. It is what we are looking for. It is what we desire. Venus rules Taurus. It also rules Libra, the 7th house. So values and what it is that you esteem as important is being linked up with, the 3 transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And these are directly associated with the forces in the universe, the creating, the sustaining, and the dissolving forces of the universe. So the opportunity presents itself, like, here's my chance to start a new beginning. Start using what you need, what you really do need, as a symbol to produce the feeling in your body that you're okay. and with repetition comes absorption. The other thing is that it's the whole concept of transformation. Having a clear understanding of what it is that we're trying to do when we're trying to transform ourselves. Because one of the misunderstandings is we think change equals transformation. Not all change is transformation. That when you look at change and you look at, there is a difference between what's called a mechanical change and a chemical change. Mechanical changes are not the same as transformation. Going from secretary to lawyer is a mechanical change. Going from ice to water to vapor is a chemical change. Now, the whole thing of the human being going from unconscious awareness to self-conscious awareness to superconscious awareness is a chemical change. And so there is going to be a lot of changes in the framework of transforming that have to be in place. And again, that's one of the reasons why, when people go to our website, they find it to be somewhat overwhelming because there's so much information. Because to transform in the true sense of the word is not just, taking some good advice. You have to have a plan in place, and it has to include, all of the things that we talk about. Skillful use of thought, skillful use of breath, skillful use of water, skillful use of food, skillful use of exercise. Otherwise, these changes don't go deep enough. And that's where, having the assistance of, in yoga we call it the gunas, tamas, rajas, sattva. In astrology, it's cardinal, fixed, mutable. And in universal order, it's the creating, the sustaining, and the dissolving forces of the universe. And with this particular configuration, it becomes, I want to say, optimal to be able to harness that on, the 26th of this month, that you can, if you prepare yourself, this information will start to become a little bit more comprehensive or intelligible, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Swami. Well, we have a lot to look forward to with this new moon. I do want to pause from our discussion because we have some questions that were emailed in to us. So if I can ask you some of those, that would be great at this time. And the first question I want to ask you is that we have from our listeners: how long is the influence of this planetary aspect?
Well, I would give it, maybe like 2.5, 3 days before and after. Maybe it gives you about a week's time for you to optimize and take advantage of it.
Okay, great. The next question is, what is the connection between apotheosis, Jupiter, and this particular new moon?
Yeah, see, Jupiter is the expansive principle in reality. So when you look at apotheosis, you kind of look to your 12th house, which is Pisces. And Pisces is ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. There's a co-rulership there. So it has a lot to do with your reality system, your aspirations. And again, the expansive principle, just like all of the planets, they fit into a well laid out game plan. That if you have your aspirations, program that you are looking to grow psychologically and spiritually. Jupiter rules the higher mind. The part of us that is looking to return to this unified state. And so now when you have the sun and the moon conjunct Jupiter in this configuration, it's optimal because you've got matter, mind, and spirit all in alignment.
Thank you, Swami. I think we're going to pause from our emailed questions for a moment, and we're going to hear a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, what we're going to do is I want to open up the phone lines to our active listeners. I think we have some questions out there. So we'll be with you listeners in just a moment. We're going to pause to hear a word from our sponsors.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. Okay, Swami, what I'd like to do is I'm going to open up the phone line because I think we have some listeners out there that would like to ask you a question. So at this time, if you have a question for Swami, please go ahead and ask your questions. Okay, so I guess what we'll do is we'll get back to our questions that we have via the emails. And there is another question here. This is a really good question. I like this one. If the goal of yoga is apotheosis, as been mentioned in our other radio shows, how can she use the current astrological aspects in her personal practice toward becoming divine?
Yeah, I think the important thing to understand is that, just coming back to the Leo thing, it has to be your will. That it's not the transit that's going to make us become divine. It is my desire to do it that makes it happen. And that I think is an important distinction. A lot of people very passively are waiting for this to happen to them because of a particular astrological configuration. But you really have to focus on your practice. I liken it to the concept of whitewater canoeing. That I always remember at one time going whitewater canoeing, and the only instruction that they gave us was that you have to make the canoe go as fast as the water in order to maintain control of the water. And so when we do have, these astrological configurations that are optimal, one of the most important things is to keep your life up to speed. And so that's why a spiritual practice is so valuable, because if you have been practicing, then, of course, when the opportunity presents itself, then you'll be able to keep up with the current. Does that answer that question, do you think? Or?
I do. I think it answers that question really well. I want to ask you a question. Before the radio show, I was talking to one of our callers, and she has a birthday coming up on August 10th, and she's going to be 40. And I think she kind of wants to know is, with all of this astrological aspects going on, what can she expect and what should she do with this information?
Well, typically, your 40th birthday is typically associated with Uranus opposition Uranus. And again, that has a lot to do with what's referred to as our midlife crisis. It has to do with that whole experience of when all of a sudden the reality hits us is that I'm getting older. That I'm not going to live forever, that this body is provisional. And for a lot of us, our identity is so bound up in the body that we start to get neurotic about it. And coming back to the one-size-fits-all solution to these life challenges, when you rebirth your body in the life force and you identify with a part of yourself that is eternal, then it doesn't negate the fact that your body is provisional, but you're no longer in crisis. So again, this spiritual advance that we're starting to change your values, starting to understand that there is more to who I am than just the pain, pleasure, control dramas of my physical body. And then realigning yourself with this sense of a greater whole.
Oh, great. I think that would be helpful. Now, I have one last question from one of our listeners via email, and that is, as a novice astrologer with a birth chart, what should I look at in my birth chart to get an understanding of how the new moon conjunct Jupiter will impact the different departments of my life?
Well, I think the first thing, if you have a basic understanding of astrology, one of the things I found most helpful was the translation of using my birth chart in conjunction with my chakra system, because that kind of gave me a template for how my mind works. Then what I would suggest is wherever the lunation is happening in your chart, by house placement, that will give you clues into the department of your life, because it's going to be like a flashlight effect. That will pull up that department in your life. And then from there, any aspects that it has to any planets in your chart. And then looking, to even go with it a little bit further, you look at the houses and the signs that are on the cusps, and then the planets that are in aspect and the houses that they rule. Because that's where you will start to see the effects of this particular lunation.
Okay, I hope that answers that question for her. It seems pretty straightforward. I'm going to promote your services just for a moment here, since we're talking about natal charts, astrological charts, and so on and so forth. I know you are available to do that for people, our listeners, and whatever. So you can be contacted at contact@ipdtransform.com. You can be emailed, and maybe they can set up a time for you, to gather their information so you can run their natal charts, and then you can help them further, much more than what we can do in this half-hour program.
Yeah, that's always a possibility that you could set up an appointment. It could be done on phone. It could be done online. We could do that. We could do that through Powwow. You could do a consultation, on screen like that. Yeah, that's a possibility.
I just want to make sure the listeners know that there's so much more to this than what we're just talking about today. Obviously, our goal is to understand the importance of our primary relationship, and that is with our divinities. But yet we have a lot of people out there that, need to find their way. They need to find the path, to get there. And I think understanding where they are, astrologically speaking, I think could be a big help for people. Would you agree?
Yeah, because we do use the birth chart as a map. It is your karmic pattern. It will give you insights into strengths that you come in with and challenges that you are faced with. And also, with what we call transits and progressions, it will give you an element of timing. Based on the relationship between where the planets were at the time of your birth and where they are now, that's what sets up this biosphere of energy. Because there is, just like we're looking at now, we're looking at the chart of a new moon in Hampton, New Hampshire. But that is affecting each and every one of us differently because we have a different karmic pattern. So you not only have the actual biosphere of energy that's available collectively, but then you have something that's individually. And that's, one of the things that we learn in yoga is things are happening on different levels simultaneously. It's kind of like looking at things through a microscope, then looking at the same thing through a naked eye, and then maybe even, looking at it through a telescope. Those different ways of examining or perceiving that biosphere of energy.
Thank you. Well, we need to start closing down our program, so I would like to invite the listeners out there to visit our website, follow us on Pinterest, on Twitter, Facebook, etc., and keep those questions and curiosities coming. We do enjoy hearing from you. And I'd like to, again, let listeners know that you are available to do those astrological chart consultations. And Swami, do you have any other thoughts that you would like to talk about this new moon that's coming up and heartfelt loyalty?
Yeah, the whole thing of like we were talking about is just how things are happening on different levels. That whatever it is that we desire, whatever it is that we will, that we want, there's an old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And, it's amazing how we're able to manifest things oftentimes, and a lot of times it's not always for our own good. One of the things I've always noticed is no matter how impoverished people are, they still seem to find money to buy cigarettes. That it's like, what's the logic behind that? What are the driving forces behind these? And that's a big part of finding our solution to life. That's a big part of this spiritual advance that we have started, is to be able to reconstruct your values and start to understand what's really important to us. And then, through repetition comes absorption, so that we do have this sense of loyalty and devotion to the right source, the right symbol. Because we have choices. And to be able to make distinctions, because they don't all give you the same return. There's a lot of advice that's out there that can be somewhat confusing and misleading. Phrases like, your true nature. Well, what's that? And so those are a lot of things that I think we offer people clarity on, and we pinpointed, and then of course how to actually do it. So with that, I will wish everybody a good day, and namaste.
Namaste.